Welcome back, and in this quick little video I'm going to show you how to edit and manage your animated keyframes. This will be part 7, I believe, actually part 8, and part 9 will finish us up. So in part 6 we animated our camera. So I have my camera simply moving into the shot and moving to the left side of the kid. But let's say I wanted to now change that, or I wanted to add in um, some more keyframes, or I didn't like the keyframes I made. How would I do that? Well, you're going to come down here to your timeline, and you're going to put your mouse pointer right on this top black line until you see a double arrow. And I'm going to left click and drag up, and that increases the height of the timeline. We don't need a timeline quite this big, but what that's going to allow me to do is I'm going to split this giant window now into two. So to do that, I'm going to come up here to the upper right hand corner where I see those three little diagonal lines. It might be tough to see on the video, but when your mouse pointer changes to a little cross, then you're going to hold your mouse there. You're going to left click and hold your left mouse button down, and then you're going to drag your mouse down and backwards. And when you do that, it's going to split the window into two, and it's going to be two copies of the same window. So you now have two timelines, which of course we don't need. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this top timeline, and I'm going to come over here in the bottom left hand corner, and I'm going to click on the little icon here, and this shows different kinds of editors. So every single one of these windows is an editor. I have a 3D editor, another 3D editor, timeline editor, another timeline editor. Alright, so I'm going to click here, and the type of editor I'm going to change this timeline into is called a Dopesheet. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm going to put my mouse pointer back on this black line at the top of my timeline, and I'm going to left click and hold and drag downwards. And I like to keep my timeline pretty small, about there. Okay, and then I'll resize my Dopesheet. Okay, so the Dopesheet basically works in conjunction with the timeline. It shows all of the keyframes and a lot more information, but we're just going to focus on keyframes for an animated object. So I have my camera selected. Let me deselect my camera. You'll also see that now I'm using, in the bottom left hand corner, you'll see the keys that I'm pressing. So hopefully that will help in future screencasts. Okay, so now you're going to see a Dopesheet summary. You're going to see the object that's animated. So in this case, it's the camera. The camera has an action. It's got movement. And then you can get down here and you can see that I made a keyframe on the camera's location. Now, if you don't like seeing all of this information, or it's a little overwhelming for you at first, or it's a little too much, what you can do is, of course, is you can click on these little downward pointing triangles. So I'll click on an extra camera, and you'll see that it will close it. I can open it back up again, and you'll see that I just see one keyframe here for the camera on frame 1, and then I see a keyframe all the way over here on frame 240. Now the summary doesn't matter right now. What the summary does is the summary shows you keyframes on whatever frame it's on. So if I animate other objects in here, the summary will show those as well. Sometimes I like to turn the summary off because it shows everything, because it's the summary, and it's a little bit much for my eyes. So the way you turn off the summary, if you want to try it, is just right down here. You'll see it says summary. Just tap on that, click on that, and now you'll see just the objects that are animated and just their keyframes. So it's a little cleaner. Okay, so here's how we do it. Let's say I want to get rid of all of my camera's keyframes, or maybe just one. Let's say I want to change the movement. Instead of the camera zooming in, maybe I want the camera to just move left to right. Or maybe I want the camera to start off at the bottom and then move up and pan up. So what you're going to do is you're going to put your mouse pointer down here in the Dopesheet. I'm going to make this a little bigger just so you can see better. You're going to put it down here, and if you press A, you're going to deselect all keyframes, and you can see that my little diamond keyframes here change color. They're now white. If I press A again, you'll see that they're now orange. And so that means they're selected. So I'm going to press A one more time to deselect all. And it's much like a lot of the same controls are the same that we do when we're working up here in the 3D window. A wants to select all, A again to deselect all. Okay, so now let's say I want to delete a keyframe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to frame 240. Let's say this is the one I want to delete, and I'm going to right mouse click on it. And you'll see that it becomes selected. I'll then, to delete, I'll press X, and it's going to ask me, do you want to delete keyframes? And I'll left click, and boom, it's gone. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and undo that by pressing Control Z, and it's back. Okay, so let's say I want to add in a new keyframe. Let's say right here in the middle on frame 120. So I just moved my little play bar here. Let's say I wanted it to do something kind of weird here, and I wanted to rotate a little bit. So let's say I wanted to rotate, so I'm going to press R. I want to rotate on the X, and I want it to rotate a little twisty like that. Okay, so I made the change to the object. Now I'm going to insert the keyframe by pressing I, and this time I'm not just animating the location of the camera, I'm animating the rotation as well, and I want to remember both. So this time I'm going to choose location rotation, or lock rot, as I call it. And you'll see that down here now there is a new keyframe. So now you'll see that as I go back to the beginning, you'll see that my first keyframe stayed kind of at the same angle, which might seem a little confusing at first. And the reason why is because I didn't tell Blender on frame 1 to remember the rotation that it used to have. So to fix this, I could manually fix it. So on frame 1, I can go to frame 1 and I can press R, X, and I can kind of just rotate it back, and I can do it by eye, and that would work out all right for this one. I'll left click, and now I need to tell Blender to record that rotation information. So again, I'll press I, and this time I'll choose lock rot. And now it remembers the location and the rotation for frame 1. And so then it sees, watch what's going to happen, it's going to see the change in location and rotation when it gets to frame 120, and then when it goes to frame 240, again, the reason why it stayed at that angle is because I didn't tell it to change anything. If I want it to go back to a normal no rotation, I have to tell it to record that. So R, X, and then I'm just going to drag my mouse to the left so it manually corrects itself, and then left click. Now I need to tell it to record, so I, and choose lock rot. So now I have, if I go all the way back, starts off normal, flies in while it's rotating, and then as it continues to fly in, it then corrects itself on its rotation. Now, I'm not really going to keep this animation. It's a little wild for this kind of a photograph, but it's just to show you how you can add and manipulate and modify your animation. The last thing I'm going to do before I call this complete is I'm going to come down here to my Dopesheet. I'm going to press A to deselect all. I'm going to select my middle keyframe, and I showed you how to delete a keyframe. Let's say I wanted to change its timing. So right now it's on frame 120. What if I wanted it to happen faster? So what I would do is, you have to remember we're at 24 frames per second. So if I take out the calculator and I do 120 divided by 24, you can see that I get 5 seconds. So I'm giving it 5 seconds, or halfway, to basically meet that location and rotation. So let's say I want it to happen a little earlier. So what I do is I come down here and I right click and I select that keyframe, and then I just use the grab command. So I press G for grab, and then I drag my mouse to the left, and you'll see that I can make the keyframe happen anytime I want. So maybe I want it to happen on frame 60. There we go. That's it. Just left click. It stays. Go back. Press play. And now you can see it's happening much faster. And then it has more time and it's much slower to reach the ending point. And there we go. And if I want it to happen later in the animation, I just right click to select it, G to grab it, move it maybe back here, rewind, press play, and just try it out. So now you really get to fine-tune the movement. And this is going to become very important in the last video where we think about timing and how that's going to affect the mood of the animation. When we fly into or when we animate the camera. So you have to really think about the mood and the tone and how that's going to affect everything. So the dope sheet, once you get into animation, you're pretty much always going to have a dope sheet and a timeline because they're like peanut butter and Nutella, or Nutella and strawberries, and they just go so well together. So try it out. When you create a keyframe, you see the diamond. When you want to delete a keyframe, you have to select it, and you can delete it, and then you can grab them and move them and rearrange them. And there's a whole bunch more that we can do down here, but these are just the basics. Okay? Good luck and get your camera animation nailed down, and remember, it can be simple to be effective. In the last video, I'm going to show you how we're going to be able to animate subjects in the animation, and in this case we'll be animating the boy. See you then.